Okay, this video is about genre and the style periods. Genre really can be anything that you want to group together that has similarities. There's no real rules that say you can't use that grouping as or category as a genre. You can do whatever you want to have a genre, as long as you can justify it. Put all your black socks together, all your knee socks together, all your ankle socks together. But what do you do with black ankle socks and black knee socks? Do they go with the knee socks or the black socks or the ankle socks? See how complicated it gets right away, trying to decide what genre something belongs to. We already saw this frame. Remember it about frame that makes art. Again, music is sound in time. Talked about progress in art not being fair to expect some kind of technical progress. That's not the way art works. Igor Stravinsky, the music categories, classical music in Western art. Well, classical music is Western art music. Classical music is the art music produced or rooted in traditions of Western liturgical and secular music, encompassing a broad period from roughly the 9th century to present times. Oftentimes, this music is called classical. But remember, it's not a great term to call it classical. Perhaps better it would be called concert music, because you generally, classical music, you're going to sit and you're going to listen. It's not something that generally you do, even if you, well, that's how I would describe it, right? And it's written before. It's not improvised right now. That wouldn't be a classical music concert. So classical can also refer to the Greeks and Romans. We talk about the classic Greeks and Romans, classical period. But in reality, the classical period in music is a style period from 1750 to 1820. So why do we use the term classical? Well, when you think about it, we use the word classics and we say, oh, that book is the top 100 classics. It's in the top 100 classics. Or that 1957 Chevrolet is a classic. What do we mean? We mean the form is something unique and special that it holds up as a model of excellence and achievement. That's what a classic is. And that's what classical music is. We're going to listen to classic pieces that have just stood the test of time. And the same thing with the composers. It's just this good stuff. And it doesn't matter if the styles have changed. The 1957 Chevy is still a cool car. Okay, so how do you get rid of this thing here? Pop music and popular music, a few other terms. Pop music is intended for consumption by a wide audience, right? And popular music, this means that how many people are interested in it and like the music. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata is very popular music, but it's not pop music. We can listen to his Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. So usually composers, they intend on writing pop music. It's not something that happens because they want to sell it and make money, right? It's commercial music. So popular music and pop music stand in contrast to both art music and traditional music, which are typically disseminated academically or orally to smaller local audiences. Although popular music sometimes is known as pop music, the two terms are not interchangeable, right? You could write a piece of music and it would be pop music, but it might not be popular. Darn it. Popular music is a generic term for music of all ages that appeals to popular tastes, whereas pop music usually refers to a specific musical genre. It's like, well, that's part of a particular style that you kind of already know that people are they're going to like it because they're used to hearing things like that. That's what pop music is. There we go. Concert music. Get this guy out of the way. It's also generally longer than pop music and have a lot more information content. It's kind of like, reading a graphic novel. Even though it might really be entertaining, it's not like a book of can't think of his name, the guy that wrote The Shining and all those books were a very popular artist, or Shakespeare for that matter, right? It's we still read Shakespeare, and it's very difficult for us to understand because it's a different language for communicating. Even though it's English, the style, there you go, the style is completely different and foreign to us. So generally pop music is short, right? And it has some elements that we can really latch onto, where concert music has a lot of content. And between the beginning and the end, there's a lot of things that happen, and generally it's going to be long. Not just 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes. Some pieces of music are 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and longer. Music as a mirror. Right? For the last millennium, so we're talking from the year 1000, the music of the West has been marked by almost constant stylistic change. And non-Western music does not have that characteristic. So in Western music, the change is a result of developing concept of the composer, right? The composer became more important or a very important element in writing music, someone whose ego shapes the content of his or her music. So as we move through time, we are a witness to a constant reevaluation of just what should be expressed in music. And artists, by definition, seem to be always looking for a new way to do things. As the rate of change increases in Western society, so does the rate of stylistic change increase in Western music. Things happen faster. The term folk music has several different meanings. We're not going to listen to a lot of folk music, but we will actually, right? Folk music is the term for musical folklore. The term, which originated in the 19th century, has been defined in several ways. As folk music can be any genre of music originated from the ethnic community of a specific region. For instance, the music of the Tarahumara Indians from the non-Western music examples, which I would say is definitely folk music. And some of the music we listen from the Bulgarians, that's folk music, definitely. Flamenco music is definitely folk music. So what is folk music? It's often not recorded, but it's passed down orally, right? As a music transmitted by mouth from one person to another, as the music of the lower classes and as a music with unknown composers. So isn't it odd that the rich people don't have their own music, but poor people do? Poor people have, the lower classes have a folk music, but the rich people don't have a folk music. It has been contrasted with commercial and classical styles, folk music. Since the middle of the 20th century, the term has also been used to describe a kind of popular music that is based on traditional music. You may not know these people, but in the 1950s and early 60s, this type of folk music, which was, I call wooden music, there were not electric instruments, there were wooden instruments, um, typically guitars, banjos, acoustic basses, maybe a violin. And they were popular, but this category of music, because it was acoustic, became known as folk music, right? Peter, Paul, and Mary is a group. The Kingston Trio. The Weavers had several big national hits. Mariachi music. Is that a folk music? I'm not sure how you would call that, but we said it is Western music. It's not non-Western music, but it is a folk music. I don't know. You tell me. Fusion genres. Fusion, right? When we put two things together that don't normally go together. And like folk rock. It's like, which is it, folk or is rock? Electric folk. Again, you know, Bob Dylan, who won a Nobel Prize for Literature in the last few years and was very popular in the 60s. He played folk music, really, and he was a songwriter and very special style of singing his own songs. At one stage in his life, he decided to play the electric guitar, and he went to a concert and he played the first half in his normal style with the acoustic guitar. And then the second half, he came out and was prepared to play with electric guitar, and the audience booed him. And it took a while for him. He kind of lost his audience because he went from folk guitar, acoustic guitar, to electric guitar. But he still played the same kind of message. And folk music generally does have some kind of a message. And folk metal, gosh, I don't know what that is. Progressive folk music, the Mamas and the Papas. Oh, yeah, there we go. Bob Dylan, Joan Baez. And then Tex-Mex music. Would you call that a folk music? You know what Tex-Mex music? They use the button box accordion, the diatonic instrument. Again, we see these terms, but we're going to use the terms over and over again, and that's how you learn the meaning of words and you feel comfortable them using them yourselves because you've heard them so many times, right? Liturgy, fixed set of ceremonies, words, etc., that are used during public worship or worship, any religion. Again, the contrast between program music and absolute music. Music can be it's either one or the other, but it's not generally, it's not both. Okay. Absolute music doesn't have any musical storyline that it's trying to define or recreate, where program music does have some kind of a story. And it doesn't have to be a big story. It could be complicated and a long story, or it could be just a piece of music that you call it Snowflakes. And so it's very short, and I call it Snowflakes. So right away, you're going to expect something that is snowflake-like and not like a big dragon. So that would be program music, just because I called it Snowflakes. We'll study about these when we get to program music. These are examples of forms that are quite structured, but they're program music. They tell a story, a symphonic poem, a tone poem, a program symphony, which is more than one movement. Symphony is always more than one movement. A concert overture is program music, tells a story. Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet, you'll recognize the music when we play it. And incidental music is program music. Incidental music, because like incidental means like it doesn't really, it's incidental. It's like I'm going to get my tie tack, and I don't really need the tie tack on my tie, but it's kind of incidental and it makes things nice. So we'll learn what incidental music is during the semester. And then absolute music forms. We're going to study sonata allegro form, the difference between that and a sonata, theme and variations, just what it says, rondo, a fugue. We already heard a fugue in our Benjamin Britten piece, a canon, which is generally a simple type of fugue, a prelude, which I could use through compose. An etude is for a solo instrument. And then other types of absolute music forms that don't tell a story. And again, music is either sacred music or it's secular music. Sacred music has to do with the church and secular music does not. That's it. So a couple examples of which we're going to learn through this semester is the Mass. And you say, why do we have to study sacred music? I don't want to do sacred music. I'm not interested in religion. Well, the deal is that for a good part of history, the Christian church, the Catholic Church, had the money and they hired the best artists and the best musicians that they could get from all over Europe. And these artists and musicians, especially the musicians, were allowed to write a popular music that was, it was not pop music, but it was very popular. And they were cutting edge artists. So they weren't sacrificing their talent to work for the church. And they said, well, I can write a mass and I can go nuts and be creative within the style period. And they did. And this, so that's why we listen to sacred music, is because that's where the best musicians and composers were doing their work, period. These are all forms of sacred music. Secular music, a chanson and a madrigal. This is for solo, and this is for a group. And we'll see that there's a lot of secular music that the literal word is song, but in its particular language, it means more than just song. So a chanson is French for the word song. In Britain, they use the word air, A-I-R, for song. In German, they use the word Lied, L-I-E-D, for song, and songs are Lieder, L-I-E-D-E-R. And again, there are, when I say Lied, you'll say, oh, I know what that is. When I say chanson, you say, oh, that's a different type of secular song. And I mentioned this before, early music is medieval, Renaissance, and early Baroque periods. And generally you'd like to hear it performed on original instruments and also with an attitude of authenticity. So they said, well, they would hold their instrument this way. And it's like, well, so what? It's like, well, it sounds different when you hold it this way. Or they did certain things where they ornamented it a certain way. And it's like, it's not written in the music, but I know the style and that's what they did. Or volume and changes in tempo. These things are all from certain styles. And if you would use the wrong interpretation on it, you could be criticized for not following the style that it was intended to be performed in. A drama, right, is something that has acting in it. An opera or other in which the musical and dramatic elements are of equal importance and strongly interfused. So an opera is like a play, but all the storyline is told by singing. Different than a Broadway musical. Different style, but the same general idea with scenes and acts and smoke bombs and staging, artwork, dance, small groups, big groups. These are all types of music drama. All those, like the cantata is sacred and sometimes secular, but mostly we're going to listen to sacred. Oratorio is sacred, ballet is secular. Musical theater, we just talked about that. So the structure of a music composition, right, is the musical form. Refers to the overall structure or plan of a piece of music, and it describes the layout of the composition as divided into sections. It doesn't have sections. A prelude doesn't have sections. The term is regularly used in two senses: to denote a standard type or genre and to denote the procedures in a specific work. Orchestral music, symphonic music, piano music, the madrigal versus counterpoint, theme and variations, a symphony. The nomenclature for various musical formal types may be determined by the medium of performance, the technique of composition, or by function. String quartet, serialism, mass. We're going to study all this stuff. Okay, what is instrumental genre, right? And really, I asked Alexa, and she said that it can be the form. Instrumental genre can be the form, the content, or the technique that unifies it. Could be other things, right? You could say the style period. Is it from the 50s? Is it from the 80s? Right away, oh, I know there's a difference in my mind. The 50s music is like this, the 80s music is like this, the 60s music is like that, as far as pop music and rock and roll, right? And then you can just say, well, all the solo piano music, or how about all solo instrument music? Or how about let's just have a genre of orchestral music? Solo instrument forms, right? Again, these are just examples, and we're going to use the words and see them over and over again. And these are forms that have multiple movements, and these are forms that have single movements. And this is for solo instrument. Sonata, sonatina, usually something like this means a small sonata, sonatina. A suite is multi-movement, partita, others, right? And then single movement works. An etude, a prelude, intermezzo, rhapsody, dance. And when we take a dance that's a popular dance and we use the form of that dance, the beat and the characteristics of it, and we turn it into a concert piece, then we say it's a stylized dance. It's based on the style of that dance, a composition. And some stylized dances are mazurka, polonaise, waltz, polka, minuet, scherzo, nocturne, others. And examples of chamber music. Again, the thing about chamber music is you have one player per part. These are all examples of chamber music. Remember, a piano trio is not three pianos. What's in a piano trio? One piano, one violin, one cello. Piano quartet, only one piano. Piano quintet, only one piano with string quartet. So if it's for solo instrument, it's generally unaccompanied. And there are solo pieces written for all instruments, Western instruments. Chamber music, one player per part. That's really the definition. Any combination of instruments you want. And then orchestral music. And again, I like to use the word orchestra, and it could be a string orchestra, it could be a guitar orchestra. And the key is if you have more than one player per part, then it's orchestral music like this. They have 18 first violins, all playing the same part. 16 second violins, again, the same part, the same part, the same part. That's orchestral music. That would be a string orchestra. And if you add optional woodwinds, brass, percussion, harp, anything else you want to add, electric guitar, then we generally call it a symphony orchestra because it has winds and percussion. Orchestral music forms. So it's a symphony. The title will include the word symphony. And a symphony must be a multi-movement work. You wouldn't use a symphony if it only has one movement. That would be incorrect. A concerto is for a multi-movement work written for solo instrument accompanied by orchestra. Typically, a symphony has 4 movements. A concerto has 3 movements. And the concerto grosso, this is a term from the Baroque period. Program, symphony, symphonic poem, theme, and variations. Again, we're going to look at all these things. Not important, but it does explain things, why we have timbre, right? Again, it's Pythagoras is the one that kind of discovered it. He didn't create it because it was there all the time. He just did with mathematics, figured out by dividing the string, the length of the string, that you would get these different notes that would be created, different pitches. And the overtone series has all of these notes in it, right? And some of them are stronger than others, depending on what instrument it is, and that's what creates timbre. And this is what it would look like. These are all the notes, the harmonic notes, the fundamental series on top of one basic fundamental note. All of these notes are included with the sound when you play this on the piano. And then if you go to the next note and you play it, it also would have the same relationship of all those notes creating the timbre. Vocal non-dramatic, right? It's not part of there's no acting, right? So, but it's vocal. So single movement works that are vocal, non-dramatic would be lead, song, air, motet, chanson, madrigal, a chant, plain chant, Gregorian chant, organum, multi-movement vocal works, mass, song cycles, symphonic cycles. So the this is the typical way that music appreciation is studied, and this is the way it's presented in the book. It's a horizontal presentation. We start in the Middle Ages, and then we go to the Renaissance, and then to the Baroque, the Classical period, the Romantic period. They're not all here on my page. Another way to look at the same thing, a vertical thing, medieval, right? Renaissance, Baroque, Classical, Romantic. And so we would start, do all the book chapters for here, do all the chapters here, etc. And then we would be finished the semester. Unless we ran out of time, then we would skip this. And I never run out of time. But this happens, right? So it's like, well, what happened in the 20th century? Oh, we ran out of time. So I am restructuring the course. I done this before. When I was a student and a graduate from the Teachership Academy, they presented lots of different ideas to consider as far as teaching techniques. And one of the things I learned was a technique called interleaving. And they had done research in teaching styles of art. And they had an example where they said, okay, you have this painter, and this painter. So we could study a lot of paintings of this painter, Painter 1, and a lot of painter style paintings of Painter 2, and then a lot of paintings from style 3, Painter 3, and go on, and then ask you, okay, an example, and then show something you haven't seen, but which style is this? 1, 2, or 3? On the other hand, they did experiment and say, okay, let's teach some paintings of 1, some paintings of 2, some paintings of 3, and let's go back again and teach some of 1, some of 2, and some of 3, and again 1 and 2 and 3. And then when it's all over, they did testing and found that the students were much better at identifying style periods because of this interleaving technique. So this is what I have done. I have restructured the chapters in the book. I haven't added any chapters. I just reorganized them and into these 9 style periods. So typically, well, the book has it in the part, the first music part, Prelude 2, they have it for the Middle Ages and Renaissance together. And I object to that. Why do you put the Middle Ages and Renaissance together? They're 2 different style periods. So what? We don't have a whole lot of information on the Middle Ages. Just have a short chapter. That's it. Why do you have to put it with this other one? They're not the same. They shouldn't be together. That's the way the book does. Middle Ages and Renaissance. Like the Middle Ages doesn't count. It's when it all started. It's amazing. And then they would go to, again, through the different style periods. So they break the 20th century down. So they have Middle Ages, Renaissance as one, then the Baroque, then the Classical, then the Romantic period, and the 20th century is broken down into 2 parts, right? Up to World War II, and then after World War II, the present. And so I looked at the chapters and I thought, wow, look at this. There's examples of sacred choral music for all of the different style periods. And so this is what I have done. And so we will, I'll show you another slide how we're going to do it. And it's all organized. And it won't be any more difficult, but I think it'll be more fun. And I think you will learn more from doing it this way. But this is how I've grouped it, right? Sacred choral music as opposed to secular choral music, and then secular song. So what's the difference? Well, a song is for one voice. And if it's choral music, it's for a group. And if it's sacred, it's sacred. And if it's secular, it's non-sacred. So those are our 3 categories of vocal music for the most part, right? But then I also include functional sacred music. And what is that? Well, that's music that is designed to be performed for a service, a particular service, where sacred choral music is just in reverence to God, and the functional sacred music is like a mass, is part of the service that is the major deal for the Catholic Church is the Mass, right? And then theater is opera and ballet, and again we have examples, many, so I just group them together. Ballet is a drama, and it's acting, but it's danced, and there's no spoken word and no voice, although there is music, right? That's the ballet. If you're going to dance, you dance to music. And then there are a section on absolute music and program music, and I have a section that just puts the chapters that use piano music. Some of the chapters are for solo piano and some for solo and piano and orchestra. And then there are a number of chapters that are stylized dance music. Again, I haven't added anything. I just shuffle them up and put them together into genre. And so we'll go through each one of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, right? Each of these style cards, basically 9 times. Okay, please see the interleaving chapter. Let's see, where is this? Yeah, here we go. So if you want, this is on the Blackboard page, right? And it shows, for instance, here's my first section, sacral choral music. This is where we're going to start because we already have done the nuts and bolts of music. Part one, materials music, is through chapter 13. And the first music where we really listen, well, it starts with chapter 14 and it's Middle Ages. So here we go. And then chapter 15. And then we'll skip 16 because it's in secular choral music. So we'll just follow this left to right. And there are no chapters for this one here, so that's just the way it is. And this chapter 54, so we'll do 15, 18, 21, 25, 54, and 69, and have gone through all of the style periods one time. And then we'll come back again, and we'll 16, 17, there are no examples here, right? 50, chapter 50, and so that's how we'll manage this. And I may add some pieces, of course, and you can always bring up a discussion on a piece of music you're interested in. So I think that is the explanation here of the genre and the style periods and how we're going to manage it. So right off, we're going to do, because in the textbook, each style period is preceded by a prelude. So when do we do those preludes? If everything's all going to be reorganized using the interleaving technique. So it's we're going to do all the preludes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 initially. I'm going to make a video on those, and you'll do a worksheet. So that ends this video lecture.